I got you.
You got me.
Perfect. All right, so we're just going to start this thing off. Welcome to UnsignedCast, the podcast about unsigned rappers that never made it and all the crazy stories you never heard. Tonight's guest, I got Smooth Black, coming out of Baltimore, Maryland, also in the D.C. area. We're going to talk about that.
So Baltimore, I did the pit fights thing in Baltimore, but, I'm not really from Baltimore. I'm from, PG County, which is about an hour away.
I got you, man. So I was giving you more street cred.
I'll take it.
Honestly, that's another thing and we can honestly get right into that because this is kind of all about origin stories and everything like that. So obviously, as we talked about before we actually started this, you are my first person that I'm talking to that's out of state from where I'm at, which is Detroit area, Michigan. So, congratulations on that. You've been my first out of state guest.
All right, it's an honor,
Absolutely glad to have you. So being from that, from I guess an hour away from Baltimore, let me ask you this first. So do you consider yourself more East Coast or more from the South? Where do you draw the line there?
Well, I would say, Maryland, people in Maryland in this area, we definitely don't consider ourselves the South. So I would say it's definitely the East Coast. I've heard it called, the Middle East, just things like that, so.
I got you. So going back, you were born 84, right?
85.
85. I was close. Close enough. So we got a 3 to 4 year difference in age. So you're about 3 years older than me. So what is your earliest when you think back? What's your earliest hip hop memory in terms of whether it was an artist, whether it was a music video at the time, song on the radio? What is your earliest memory of that?
My earliest memory, man, it's the thing about me that's different when it comes to, hip hop, most cats, they kind of grew up and they had hip hop all around them when they were kids and they have these early memories. But, I grew up in a more kind of a stricter household. My parents were pastors and they didn't really let me listen to hip hop like that, which is actually that brings me to it. So we couldn't watch none of the music videos like The Box and MTV, BET, all that stuff.
Man, shout out to The Box, man. Legendary.
The Box, yes.
The Box,
watching. Yeah, we used to flip back between VH1, The Box, MTV, and BET. It was 17, 18, 19, and 21. Those were the channels.
Absolutely, man.
Yep. So I would say around 1996, my parents started to become a little bit less strict, and they would let us watch, music videos. We couldn't buy CDs or nothing like that, but we could listen to, stuff on the radio sometimes and watch music videos. And I remember the first music video, she started letting us watch stuff when she caught us watching it, if we would be watching MTV on the low, with our finger on the last channel button. And she caught us watching, it was P. Diddy, More Money, More Problems.
Oh,
and so
nice.
yes. So that's one of my first memories. It's not really super boom bap 90s hip hop, shiny suit hip hop, but
Right. No, and the reality is, that's kind of like it is for me. I've about the whole parent thing, I think your parents were definitely stricter than mine in some regard. I was going to ask you about that too, because I got that vibe. Obviously don't know a lot, but I definitely got that vibe that's probably more of a stricter household. And so basically it was kind of because they already caught you kind of sneaking around listening to it, they kind of made the decision, if we keep trying to prevent them from it, it's going to probably make you rebel a little bit more kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what it was.
I got you. Did they ever do the thing as people who come from, the church community and all that? I know that some people I knew that grew up in religious households, their parents would try to do a compromise, we don't really like rap, but how about you listen to this Christian rap? Was that ever
Yes.
Okay. I got you.
I actually did find some good Christian rap around that age when I was in high school that I actually enjoyed. They never really blew up, but it was they were kind of lyrical, but they were more Christian with it, So
yeah, absolutely. No, that's pretty fascinating. So at what point are you deciding that you want to try getting in the mix? I know you from being a battler. Were you making music before battling, or was it the other way around?
Yes, I was making music. I would say when I was in the Marines, I met this guy, like one of my fellow Marines, and like his name was Craig, and he kind of really put me on to, what real hip hop is, quote unquote, like the purest 90s boom bap hip hop, what makes rap dope and lyrical and stuff like that. So he kind of, so this is around, 2006, 2007. And so I'm listening to, D4L and, Lil Scrappy and all that. And he's like, he's like, come listen to this old Nas right here. Come listen to this Reasonable Doubt that's ready to die. And because I had missed all those because I couldn't buy albums back then. So he put me onto that, and he's like, see, this is dope because he's talking about this, and this line actually means this.
Right.
And so once I started listening and seeing what these lines meant and what these brothers were talking about, that's when I became more intrigued, and I was like, yo, I could do that. Like I could write something dope like that. So I think I started writing. I probably wrote my first verse when I was about 22.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I gravitate to more of the old rap and everything. I started writing verses, downloading old beats. I met this other guy named Intrigue in DC. He had a studio. So, he wasn't in DC, he was in Maryland. But yeah, I would drive to his studio and just record my little mixtapes. And that was from about, I would say, probably about 2007 to 2010. And then like Grind Time came through, and that's when I started to shift over from, writing, because like I would make these little mixtapes and I would hand them out to my friends in college and stuff like that, but it didn't really catch on because at that point that was like after hip hop had shifted from being lyrical to being about snapping and dancing and stuff. So I was late to the party,
Right.
So it wasn't really marketable. It didn't really blow up like I thought because I was like, wow, I can rap just as good as anybody else. So obviously I'm going to get famous. People are going to appreciate what I'm doing, but it didn't really, it wasn't really working out that way, And so
and that's what's fascinating to me. So because I want to get into that whole that idea of becoming famous and all that in a second. One thing though I'm more curious about is, so before you go into the military, what is the reason you go into the military? What's the, was it always going to be that way? Were you one of the people who were like, post 9/11, I'm amped up to go to war? Like what all was the... Okay, I got you.
I would say a lot of it was because I went to a school that had a Marine Corps ROTC program, and Marine Corps recruiters, they're like sharks, man. They're like used car salesmen, and they know how to kind of sell you a dream per se, not necessarily saying that they totally lie to you or anything like that, but they'll kind of paint a picture for you that might not be exactly what you think it is.
Yeah.
Until you get there. Not to say that, I was just totally, bamboozled and lied to or anything, but I had a vision that wasn't all the way realistic, but so that was, and so a lot of it, there's like, you join, but we'll give you $25,000 for college. You're going to be able to travel. You're going to get girls. Are we able to curse on this podcast?
Damn. Oh yeah, bro.
Oh yeah.
I told you about some other things that we talked about.
Yes.
It's pretty much a free for all.
Yes, I was like, we're gonna get some bitches. We're gonna get all that, and things are gonna be going to travel. We're gonna shoot guns. So I did want to go out and be like this action hero and be jumping out of explosions and shooting people and stuff. That was an attractive thing, and to earn college money at the same time. It's like, it's no brainer.
Do you think this is getting a little introspective, but it's something that interests me because your whole everything about you is really original in terms of the people that I pretty much come across, especially from the rapping aspect. So obviously you growing up in a very religious family, probably there wasn't a lot of that that craziness going on. Do you think part of that reaching out to the military and that drive of being able to shoot guns and this all this action, because that we weren't really around that as a kid, that was man, I want to.
Definitely. I definitely wanted to get as far away from that restrictive environment as possible. Like
Yeah.
at some point, they actually gave me, I don't know if I told my parents this before, but they gave me what they call a dream sheet for my next duty station out of boot camp. They was like, yo, you could be stationed in Virginia or Atlanta, which are all, are you there?
Yeah, I'm
sorry, I thought, yeah. So it's like Virginia, or Atlanta, which is all reasonably close, or Washington State. And I was like, fuck it. I wanted to go all the way to Washington State so I could be as far away from my parents as possible, you know, as far away from all that stuff, you know. But it's kind of ironic that, you know, I grew up in a very restrictive environment. And in my infinite wisdom, I'm like, yeah, if I want to run away and get freedom, let me go run to the most restrictive military service.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, that's
the most
what happened.
The most disciplined job that you could possibly have.
Exactly. I don't know what I was thinking in that regard, but you know, that's what happened.
Yeah. No, I know those guys do oversell it though. I remember I had to be like, I don't know, 16, 17. I remember one of those guys came up to me and one of my friends, and they're like, you know, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? And I was like, I'm a rapper. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, you can come to the military. We got a band. Like, you know?
What?
Yeah, bro. They said like
that's terrible. A band. Wow. Like the drill instructors would have laughed in your face. They're like, are you serious? You're gonna be here for 4 years. If I hear you rapping, I'm gonna haze you. You know, just. You know.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, I'm sure it would have been all bad. So
yeah, it's like you would have been the rap guy in the platoon. They'd be like, hey, look, this is the rap guy right here. He's gonna rap in the band. They
probably would have been laughing even more that I said that I signed up because I thought it would help my rap career. That probably would have been a
yes, you would have been the laughing stock of the whole battalion. Yes.
So that's pretty funny. So obviously, so you kind of start this whole thing while you're in the military. You meet people that are kind of putting you on this whole kind of aspect of rapping and more a bigger depth into hip hop. Because at that point, you really only were listening to it for entertainment, really the dance and the kind of radio songs. And then you got that deeper look, and that's what got you into writing in the first place.
Yes.
So are you, at this point when you are writing and recording, are you completely out of the military at this point? Is there some where you're still stationed somewhere? Like,
oh yeah, I was out. Like I would say I wrote my first couple verses when I was in the military, but once I started like going to the studio and everything like that, I was a free man at that point, you know, and I was so I was out and I would just, you know, I was working, I was going to school, and I would just, you know, on the weekends I would go to the studio, drop my little $25-$50 an hour, you know, as far as in the studio, drop that, record some tracks. And that was my thing. Had my rhyme books and everything, and that was what it was.
So this is back in Maryland at this point when you start recording?
Yes, back in Maryland.
I got you. Now is it hard because obviously you're pretty much starting from scratch in terms of being in the rap scene. So how do you how do you connect with people in that scene? Are you going, because I know that obviously your parents didn't live in Baltimore or DC. Is the rap scene in Baltimore? Are you having to go to DC? Like, where are you having to go to kind of be involved in this?
So speaking of Baltimore, so what happened was, like, I was in the military. I stayed with my parents for like 3 months, and then I started going to school in Towson University, which is in Baltimore. And so that's when I really started to get into the rap scene. So like it was a lot easier to get into the rap scene in Baltimore than in PG County. So so I started going to just going to shows, you know. I met some people, and they let me do kind of my own shows where, you know, you sell your tickets, and you know, you sell like 3 tickets or something like that, and 3 people, your family and friends come fucking see you. But I was going to shows, doing my own little shows, trying to do little showcases or whatever, and that's pretty much how I got in the scene. MySpace, I would reach out to people in the area on like MySpace back then, and then Facebook, and so I just kind of networked with people and saw what was going on with the local rap scene, and that's how I kind of got connected, which was why once Grind Time came to the area, I kind of was plugged in, and I kind of knew some people that knew some people, you know.
Absolutely. What I was going to ask you, because the battling I definitely want to get into, but before that, like with your parents and stuff, when did they obviously when you first told them that you were rapping, or how they found out, how did they react about that?
No, it wasn't really bad. You know, it wasn't like you would think. Like once I got grown and they weren't, you know, I guess responsible for me anymore. They kind of more so let me go my own way and let me do my own thing. So,
I got you.
I don't think my mom really ever saw me as a rapper per se. She didn't really think that was. I thought it was something that I was gonna, you know, go further with and, you know, be, you know, a professional rapper. But she was like, I don't really see you as a rapper in that way, you know. But yeah, I mean, I did do some rap songs. I remember I did one song, which is ironic because I've been doing these posts about my dad. I made a song for my dad once. You know, he enjoyed it. It was cool, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's like I wasn't like the rap I was doing. It wasn't like I was rapping like Too Short or Plies or something that was just, you know.
Right. You weren't pimping bitches and selling drugs and.
Yeah. So I wasn't really. Yeah, I never really have rapped about selling drugs. I rapped about shooting people and stuff like that and other fantastical things, but I never really rapped about, you know, selling drugs and doing other, you know, really actual stuff like that.
I got you. So at this point, like, you know, I know you with Smooth Black. So did you go through, because a lot of the other rappers that I talked to, and including me, you know, you kind of go through that phase where you're trying to figure out what you're going to call yourself rap name wise. But being that you didn't get into it until you were like 22, was that pretty much you were like, I'm Smooth Black, this is it, I'm not messing around, or were there a couple different rap names that you had to figure out, had to grow through?
Smooth Black was really the first thing that I went on. So like the story of that is I had another friend in the Marine Corps. His name was Jonathan. He was reading a book, this funny book. It was called Real Ultimate Power, and it was written by a grown man, but from the perspective of an 8-year-old, and he was talking about his love for ninjas and how they like and in the book there was a guy named Mr. Smooth Black who was a lawyer, and somehow he got the ninjas off when they committed, you know, ninja crimes. And so I related to the guy in the book because he was black and he was a lawyer, and at that time I wanted to be a lawyer, so I related to that, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna start calling myself Smooth Black, and that was it stuck, you know, that was my name.
I got you. So that's a perfect segue to like really, because what fascinates me is the whole like I'm gonna be famous thing. Like I went through that, and like for me, you couldn't tell me anything. Like when I was 16 onwards, you could not tell me that I was not going to be the biggest rapper in the world. Like there was not a doubt in my mind. Nothing. I mean, nothing that you could bring up would. And I kind of wish that I maybe had a little bit more doubt, because I might have been more conscious about some of the stuff I was doing. But I was so like, it was like whatever is happening, this is just part of the VH1 Behind the Music story. Like it was like that's how I was. So like how, you know. Like how sure were you that it was going to happen, essentially, when you were?
Like with me, I would say that would be a thing where you and me where we differ. You know, like with me, I always had a couple of plan Bs, because I was like, I would like to be famous. That would be great if I could just live off of rap. That's my choice A.
Right.
But at the time, I was going to school. You know, I was working at, you know, the Department of Justice. So I was like, yeah, if these other things don't work, I can always fall back on that. You know, I was like, in my mind, I'm like, you know, more than likely, I'm probably not going to be the one in a million famous rapper. I'll probably end up being, you know, a paralegal or something like that. So I never really went balls to the wall with it, you know. So it didn't really suck as bad, but I didn't make it, you know, per se, because it was like I didn't really. It wasn't something that I just staked my whole life on per se.
Yeah, no, that's you made the right decision. You were smart about it and like that, but no. So that's always an interesting perspective, because you know everybody's kind of different. Even just taking a chance on it, period, is kind of a crazy thing to begin with. So it's you know, it's definitely a wild thing. So at what point, how long is it until you start battling? And is Grind Time really like the first battle, battle arena essentially, or battle league that you're battling, or was there like a smaller local league in that area originally?
Oh yeah. You're familiar with pit fights, right, in Baltimore?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the league where I got a lot of my most I wouldn't say my biggest battles, but some of my most important battles came from pit fights. But the way it worked was pit fights was a smaller, local league. It still is. It's been around for, at least 10 years.
Yeah.
And pit fights was doing their little thing. And when Grind Time was expanding, they said, yo, we're going to come to the DMV. And when they said the DMV, they just went the Washington metropolitan area, which is just local stuff now, which might not make sense. But geographically, Baltimore is not in the Washington metropolitan area. So the Baltimore people were like, hey, we want to be a part of this.
Right.
And so they expanded the league so that Baltimore DMV included, Grind Time DMV included Baltimore. And so that's how I got involved in that. And so what they were doing was they were using pit fights as their tryout league. So if you wanted to get on Grind Time, you would go on pit fights and you would test your mettle and see if you were worthy of getting on Grind Time. And so I think one of my first battles, my first battle was through pit fights, and I lost terribly.
Okay.
And all that stuff. Yes.
Wasn't how I was expecting the story to go. It was like it was going.
Oh yeah, I've taken some bad losses, because it was like the thing is, you probably know, but like it's like a totally different process, committing a song to memory versus committing, an a cappella battle to memory.
Whole different.
I definitely learned that the hard way because I thought I could just run through it a couple of times and it would just come out. And it did not, and that's what happened there, But so that's how I got into Grind Time. I started on pit fights, and so even though I lost that battle, a lot of people saw the potential in my writing process, and so they kept going with me, and things turned out okay.
That's what's up. So pause right there. So we're gonna stop right there. So what gets you? Because at this time, right, you're in school. You're going to school for being a lawyer. You already got a decent gig, a decent job at this point. So what makes you, because, we talked about how, like, even trying to become a rapper, like making songs, that, like, is taking a step into, like, maybe craziness, right? But going into battle, like, literally putting yourself on the line to get, like, possibly humiliated on camera, like, what is, it's like you're kind of becoming a glutton for self-torture, it seems like. Some of these things that I'm seeing through your life story, like, what made you, like, what was the thought process of that when you remember before you, like, got in? Because there's so many rappers that I know, that never would get into battle. They would never touch it. They would never, it was just not something that they had any interest in doing. So what made you want to do that?
Well, like, I used to watch, I think it was like Jump Off TV and stuff like that. It was like these little, like, 3-minute battles that used to come on YouTube back in the day. And I remember seeing, I think one of the first battles I saw was like Awkwards and Arsenal. So I used to watch these battles, and it looked great. Like even like when Mook battled Young Hot and all that back in that day.
Yeah.
And so I was confident in my ability, and I was also very competitive because like I wanted to be recognized for being better than other people. And in regular rap, that wasn't the thing. It didn't matter anymore if your verse was better than so and so's.
Right.
It just mattered, who's more successful. So I wanted that spirit of competition. And, I was confident in my abilities, and I thought that was a way to get. It was a good way to get shine. Like people are going to see that. We're going to post it on our page. You're going to get so many thousand views. So I was like, this might be my way of getting my foot in the door.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, too. And I'm sure as somebody who really was inspired to get into rap because of the writing, because of the thoughtfulness that went into some of the, like, 90s rap, obviously battling is you're going to have more bars and more thought out, lines than any other form of hip-hop. So that does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then, like, a lot of times if you look at old 90s rap, a lot of it is just battle raps to a beat. Like if you listen to, Wu-Tang, Triumph, like all that stuff, it's mostly battling. So my style of rapping, I was already basically battling people who didn't exist. So it's like, why not go put these against somebody in real life,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that does make a lot of sense. So you end up going for it and you're, trying out, and obviously in the beginning. You know, you're taking some L's. You're learning some hard lessons, obviously.
Yes.
At what point are you starting to turn things around and, like, you know, get it together? And what is causing that?
Let me see. It was a number of things, because once I choked in my first battle a couple of times, my mind just went blank. That kind of gave me this this mental kind of block where I would always have the what if in my mind, like what if I get up there and my mind blanks out.
Yeah.
Like that became like I used to have like nightmares in my sleep about, you know, getting to a battle and not remembering anything. That's how much I worried about it.
Oh man, no, that's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, but then so once I got over that like phobia, and I learned, you know, that even in battle rap, you know, performance and presentation is important. So I learned how to, you know, put more performance in what I was doing and more presentation, and not just go with straight bars. And that's when, you know, I started to get some more attention and some more wins, basically, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And and what you said too about the fear of choking, especially after you choke, because choking is the worst, right? Like you would rather lose a battle badly but have remembered all your lines than maybe have like an edgy battle but, you know, have a choke. Like a choke is I've had that a couple times, and it's just like it's the worst. Like you just feel like it's just because it's so hard to recover, bring things back from there. And I remember, you know, my battle league that I came from, which was Bar Wars in Michigan. You know, there was a dude, I'm not going to say his name. We talked about him on the last podcast, but I don't want to owe the dude like that because he's a nice human being. But this poor man could not choke. Like he did not have the ability. It was like choking was a superpower. Like every
league has someone like that. Every league, from URL all the way down to every league, there's always some guy who can't ever get it together.
Yeah.
You know?
So he just became legendary in his own right. But it's like and I honestly thought about that. Like, man, if I choked my first battle and then maybe my second battle, like it would be like I would keep having that nervous thought, and you let your brain can just destroy you if you like get in your own head too much. Like it's it is wild. So what are some of the, like, you know, what would you say was like the highest point of battling, like where you were like, man, like, because let me ask you this before I ask you that. Because you're still, while you're battling, are you still making music, or did you stop making music, and are you full, like, putting all your energy into battling at this point?
I would say I was probably putting about 80% of my energy into battling, and then I would kind of do some music when I had time, because I had a more of a bigger audience now. People want to hear what my album would sound like, you know. So I did still go do some music, but it was definitely in the back seat, you know.
I gotcha. So the biggest thing that you became notorious for or known for really was the battling more than the music. Is that a fair assessment at that point in time?
Definitely. Yes.
So with that being said, what is, like, if you think of like for example, and obviously our stories are different in the sense that, you know, I was going full throttle into like recording music stuff. I didn't really get into battling till, like, I would say the last years of my, like, you know, rap kind of, I guess if you want to call it rap career, just like, you know, exploring that whole avenue. So for me, like, my highlight was like a time where I thought, like, oh, this is 100% going to be it. Like, we were recording with Eminem's producer. His name's Louis Resto. He has a house in Royal Oak, which is
I've seen that name.
Yeah, which is you know, he lived, which is crazy, which is a whole nother weird thing. My mom, you know, she's living on Section 8 in this apartment, and then down the street is Louis Resto, you know, crazy successful millionaire, all this kind of stuff, like two different worlds on the same street. Like, it was insane. But anyway, so his son Kyle went to high school with the dude I was rapping with at the time.
Okay.
And we put an album out, and his son Kyle heard it, and he's like, man, I really want to work with you guys, blah, blah, blah. So he's like, come over and we'll record. Now, Kyle is, you know, because it sounds like, oh, that's really nice of him. And Kyle's a cool dude. Like, no, you know, I'm not bashing Kyle at all. But Kyle was trying to learn how to produce and make beats. So we kind of were guinea pigs towards him, which was, again, all cool. Like, it was an amazing experience. But long story short, so we're literally in this I mean, multi-million-dollar studio. There's soundboards that cost more than some people's houses in here. I mean, this thing is, we're just crazy. And, you know, recording and bringing out a microphone, like, man, like Exhibit recorded on this, 50 Cent, Eminem, like, you know, like all this stuff. And I'm 19 years old, right? So you can, so I'm telling you, I told you how I was when I was 16. Yeah. Now, some of this stuff is starting to feed my ego, and you cannot tell me nothing. Like, I remember my dad being like, you know, I'm 19, like, man, you got to start figuring out what you want to do. And I'm, like, looking at him like he's crazy. Does this guy not know what I'm doing? Like chin up, like I'm looking at him like he's like, you know, like I'm showing up in a limousine and a tuxedo everywhere I go, and like who is this? Get out of here! Get out of here! Yeah. So that's where I was with my head, and you know, so I'm thinking like 100%, like this is it, like we're about to, you know, be on, we're about to make it, and everything like that, and obviously like that did not end up happening. But so, and I know my story is that's more of a rare situation than most people. Oh, yeah. But what is your moment where you were like, whether it was maybe didn't have to be like I'm going to be a global phenomenon, but even if it was like I'm about to like be really blow up kind of with this battle thing or whatever, what was like the big highlight for that for you?
I would say, you know, there was a battle that I did because I had a really bad loss versus this guy named Heron, choked up and all that stuff. And then, you know, so people was kind of writing me off. And I was like, nah, I want to battle Murder. I don't know if you saw that battle. It's this big, huge guy, like 6 foot tall, 250 pounds. And he's really aggressive and lyrical. So everybody thought I was going to get destroyed. And so, but I came in there and I had everything wired together, and we had a great battle. Most people say I won. But it was a great back and forth. You know? So I was like, all right, I finally got this. Everything's clicking now. And then I battled a guy named PT on Grind Time, and I think we were the main event. And so I was doing good. I had my strides. Like Grind Time was doing well. I was starting to get views. I was starting to become one of the top guys in the region at that point. So I was like, all I got to do is continue doing what I'm doing. And, you know, I'm going to be out there battling hollow with somebody, you know what I'm saying, battling a bit, all that good stuff, you know. And coincidentally, that was I battled PT, and I was supposed to have something else lined up, but that was right around the time Grind Time was starting to crash, basically.
Oh,
so I think, yes, Grind Time basically disintegrated right as I was moving up and, you know, supposed to be one of those guys. Yes. And so I was able to continue my career after that. You know, just I stayed working with pit fights, and I was able to still get some good battles with them and have some great moments. But it wasn't on like more of a national level as it was on Grind Time. You know,
yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of where that went, basically, you know.
Yeah, man, and I gotta tell you too, man, Grind Time, out of all the battle leagues, when I started getting into it, like as a fan, I'm not talking about as a battler. Mm-hmm. Grind Time was what I wanted to be on. Like it was my dream to be on Grind Time, man. Like I was like, man, like URL has like too much of a vibe over here. King of the Dot is too much on the other side of the spectrum. And then, like, Grind Time kind of meshes the best of both worlds better than any of them could do. It just, like, you could have a street battler and a nerdy battler battle each other, and it wouldn't be weird. Like, it would just work.
Grind Time was people forget, like, Grind Time was #1 for a minute. Like, URL was behind Grind Time trying to catch up, which is unfathomable these days. But, like that's what it was. And then they destroyed themselves. And
did you speaking of the URL thing and all that, and like Grind Time, and like obviously, you know, watching some of your battles and stuff, I feel like you definitely were a better fit for Grind Time. But obviously, like URL, even if it was lagging behind them a little bit, it's still, that's a place where people that's like, it's kind of like 90s rap, right? There's like you got the mainstream rap, and then you have the rap for it's kind of like there's people who drink beer and there's people who know about fine wine, aged whiskeys, all this kind of stuff. URL is like the battle connoisseurs battle rap. Like this is like, you know, that's where it's at. So do you feel, were you trying to get on there at all, or were you like kind of more focused on the Grind Time kind of arena and that kind of style of battle rap more?
When Grind Time was #1, like, I mean, I guess I probably would have gone to URL maybe, but it wasn't really a concern. You know, but once Grind Time failed and, you know, URL took their place, it was like, no, this is what I want. I want to be on Smack, and like that was so I think if I had stuck with it, all this time that I haven't been rapping since like 2014, I probably would at least, gotten a little proven ground or something by then, but it was what it was.
Absolutely. Did you feel, because I know that I have, and that's how we know each other really, is because of battle rap. So I know I have people from all over the country, whether it's California, Florida, obviously you in Maryland, people from New York, all around the country from battle rap, which is dope. That's one thing about battle rap that I will say, that for whatever reason, rappers who like record music and perform it, they could never network that. The network of battle rap is better than anything I've ever seen in any type of music genre, entertainment genre. It's like the fact that, we know each other, and there's so many people that we know across the country because of it. I mean, that was just amazing. But I know a lot of people from like the Southeast, when Grind Time went away, it seemed like you guys didn't really have that bigger platform anymore. Like, obviously, at that point, it was either URL or King of the Dot. People in the North, like me, Canada is like 30 minutes away. Like I could get to win. Like I could swim across the Detroit River if I want to, and get there. So we had there was a lot of Detroit battlers that went to King of the Dot. I did a King of the Dot, Prove Yourself, and a few other people from here did, and then obviously they stayed in contact with LA a lot. So Grind Time West Coast was fine. But Grind Time, the Bay Area, and probably the East Coast, which is kind of what you were kind of under the East Coast umbrella, weren't you, with like Pumpkinhead?
Yeah. Oh yeah, so Grind Time East Coast was there, like the Grind, like they were dope. But yeah, Grind Time DMV was a separate entity.
Okay, yeah, you did say that, and that means so, because this was something else I wanted to ask you. So DMV, that stands for what again?
It stands for, so on paper it stands for DC, Maryland, and Virginia. But it's really about, like, there's a metropolitan area which encompasses part of the whole D.C. as well as part of Maryland and part of Virginia, like Northern Virginia and Southern Maryland. And so that's the area. So it's basically the outskirts of Washington, D.C. is what the DMV is, And Baltimore is further up north. And so it's kind of separate, like a lot of times D.C. dudes and PG County dudes or Baltimore guys, they don't like each other because we're seen as separate type of entities. Like because Baltimore is its own thing. Like if you say Baltimore, people know where that is. But if you say PG County or if you say Alexandria, nobody knows where that is. So you have to kind of so all those little small suburbs kind of melded together, and so you can say DMV and people kind of to get an idea of where you're from.
And that whole area, and one thing, because this is one thing that interests me, because every area obviously has its subcultures, regardless of hip hop, just period, right? So, people that grow up, it seems like whether it's Virginia, Maryland, obviously DC itself, it's kind of like here, like in the Midwest or especially Detroit area. If you're gonna, you grow up, you get a job, there's a huge chance that job's going to be working for the big three, the auto industry, in some capacity for the most part. With you guys, there's a big chance it's kind of like you're going to be working for the government. That's like the kind of the industry there. So that's got to be a crazy. That itself is just crazy for me to wrap my head around, and like being as close to like the White House and all these people that are making these big decisions that impact the rest of us. But for you, is that always kind of normal, or is that surreal ever? Like, especially you being someone who now has a job that you do, is this ever surreal, or is this just you've been around this your whole life, so it's just normal?
I've been around it so much. Like I was looking at the protests when they were like in Washington D.C., like right across from the White House. And I wasn't even looking at, like I was showing it on the news, and they were showing the White House and these other buildings. I wasn't even looking at the White House because I walked past the White House so much that it's just like almost a regular place now. I was looking at some of the other buildings in the background, like, oh yeah, I've been on that street. I've seen that coffee shop, So it's kind of just normal, I've been around. I've been in D.C. the D.C. area, my whole life. So and I work in D.C. So I'm always around like the White House in some capacity. So it's kind of a normal thing,
Absolutely.
Like when I posted that picture of me in like what building was I in? I was in the Capitol or something like that. Like it wasn't even like a big deal to me because I've been around there so much. But it was like, what, you're in the Capitol? You're in Congress? It's here,
Yeah, no, it's like it's just a regular. It's like going to the mall or something for you. It's like,
almost.
it's like right there. Yeah, that is pretty wild. So Baltimore, because you said Baltimore is north of DC, right?
Yes.
What is the time frame? Like if I'm traveling from DC to Baltimore or vice versa, what is the time frame of travel that I'm looking at?
No traffic. It's probably going to take you about 45 minutes. If it's regular traffic. Yeah, so it's probably it's about an hour away and you'll be in Baltimore City. So it's up there. Different culture.
I gotcha. Yeah, that is wild. So it's almost like because DC is it's not really in a state, right? It's its own thing. It's not. It doesn't really belong to Virginia. It doesn't really belong to Maryland. It's a district. That is a wild thing. Because like time frame wise, it's like for Detroit to Pontiac is really a 45-minute drive or something like that. So it's
what about Highland Park?
Highland Park is within. So this is another thing we could talk about. This will be interesting about the different areas we grow up in. So Highland Park technically is basically a part of Detroit. So if you go, I'll kind of take you through a journey, right? So I'm north of 8 Mile. I'm east of Woodward. I'm a few miles east of Woodward. So Woodward is kind of like the guiding line that takes you everywhere. It's like the heart that really it leads you through Michigan. You could take Woodward literally from Detroit all the way up to Pontiac. So Woodward we'll use Woodward as like the reference point. So let's say I go to I'm on 14 Mile because 8 Mile and everybody knows 8 Mile.
We know 8 Mile. I actually thought that would have been the road that the guiding light road. The 8 Mile and 9 Mile and 10 Mile and all that stuff. But,
well, it is like that. It makes things easy for going north and south. But what gets tricky though is like north of me is 15 Mile, but they don't call it 15 Mile. They call it Maple or, so it'll change names depending where you're at. And then 16 Mile is either Metro Parkway or it's Big Beaver, which is Big Beaver exit 69 off the highway, which is pretty funny. So that's a little fun Michigan fact.
That is funny.
Yeah, but anyway, so like if I go west to Woodward, which will be a few miles, I take Woodward down. When I cross 8 Mile, I'm hitting Highland Park first. So Highland Park will be right south of 8 Mile, but technically it has the same area code as Detroit. It's like a sub area of Detroit. Technically, its own city, has its own police department, and kind of like Hamtramck. You may have heard about Hamtramck too. Hamtramck is on the opposite side, but both very similar. Like cities within Detroit, basically that have their own jurisdictions. Highland Park
different because I remember like on Smack. I remember when Miles and X Factor would come out, they wouldn't necessarily say Detroit. It would say it's from Highland Park, Michigan.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about this area and that is true. Like if you're in Highland Park because it's its own jurisdiction and technically its own sub area, it's gonna say Highland Park on your driver's license, or it's gonna say Hamtramck on your driver's license if you're from there. And that's what's really interesting about Detroit is like versus other cities. Because I been to LA, been to Chicago, and I know New York. Like those big cities, they don't draw the line so much. They don't make it so distinct. So like if you're in LA, like I lived in a place called Mar Vista, but it would say Los Angeles on my driver's license, and like everybody's from LA, and like you could be in Hollywood and you're from LA, and like the line goes pretty far out. So it's like they don't have these distinct lines. And same thing with Chicago. You could be in like the suburbs around Chicago and you're from Chicago. And New York is kind of like that a little bit too. So it's weird, like with us, we do like in the Detroit area, it's very distinct. Like, you're from Detroit, you're not from Detroit. You're from this is like the city you're from. Like I'm from Highland Park. Like those lines are very distinct. And like you were when you were talking about like you were like right in the beginning of this call, you were like, I'm not from Baltimore, I'm from PG County. I know obviously an hour that's kind of far, so I hear you. But it seems like it's kind of like that there too. It seems like people are a lot more careful there about where they say that they're from, and they're more conscious of those borders than maybe places like New York, places like Chicago, places like LA.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you talk to a Baltimore guy and you say, "Oh yeah, you're from DC or you're from PG," he's 100% going to correct you and be like, "Nah, shorty, I'm from Baltimore." like every time.
They don't call it B-more anymore?
No, it's Baltimore. You know, you can't say the L. You can Baltimore. You know? Baltimore. Yeah. I think only people only people that are not from. Yeah, if you say B-more, they know you're not from Baltimore.
It's kind of like saying you're from 8 Mile.
Right. You know.
I think people know. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, man, that is definitely wild. So, you know, going back to like the battle rap and stuff like that, you talked about like the highs and stuff, and as you are excelling through battle rap, grind time is starting to kind of crumble around you. Do you remember, like, did somebody one day just break the news to you and say, hey, grind time is not going to be it? Because I wasn't inside grind time at all. Like, I was completely from the outside. So how did this, like, because you were somewhat inside of it, how did this all, like, from how you heard it, how did things, and again, I don't know if you know any of these people personally or you care about putting business out there, but I'm just kind of curious how things, like, from the inside were told that how things were going down, because it always interested me.
It was more like a social media thing, like everybody knew that, you know, Direct and Mad Ills and I think Cap Callus, like those were like the big three, you know, this World War terminology. And like they were like the big three when it came to grind time. And so when we would go on social media and we would see all these rumors about them beefing and we would see them saying a little slick stuff about each other, like that, we kind of saw the writing on the wall per se. Like nobody really came out and said grind time is over, but it was just we kept saw those guys that couldn't get along and the events they kept having like disarray to them and stuff like that.
I gotcha.
There's no more events just came up, you know, and like the other leagues just kind of took their piece. Like King of the Dot just started getting bigger and bigger, and you didn't really hear anything about, you know, grind time anymore.
Yeah.
And, we kind of just looked up and was like, oh, well, I guess this is what's going on.
Yeah. So it wasn't like so much one day there was just an announcement like, hey, this, you know, grind time's done. It was just more like it stopped happening. It was just like
it was like one singular day, you know. It's kind of like one day we're gonna wake up and we're gonna be like, yo, Jay-Z's never gonna put out another album. It's like he's not gonna say it. It's just gonna be, you know, it's like 5 years from now. They're gonna be like, I guess 444 was the last one.
Yeah. No, that is definitely wild. So what was the last like grind time like event that you remember being a part of that was the DNV or whatever?
I think it was that PT battle. I battled a guy named PT. It was a great battle. I believe I was on top of the card, you know, so I kind of made it to the top. Like once you get to the point where you're on top of the card in like local battles, then it's like you're the man in that in that region. And then the next goal is to, you know, I want to be on the top of the card in another league, you know, or in another region. So they're calling me to come headline their card, and so I was getting ready to move to that next level, and it was like there was no more next level. But yeah,
with that, I know that you were doing some the pit. What is it called again?
The pit fights.
Pit fights. That's what it is. You're doing some of that. So do you, at some point, do you feel like, oh man, you know, I don't have that grind time platform. The pit fights aren't going to take me to where I want to go. Like, at what point did things like phase out for you, or was there a definitive moment where you stopped battling?
After grind time died, you know, it was like a lot of the other leagues kind of filled in the vacuum. So pit fights did get bigger to an extent. It didn't get big to the point that grind time was, but it was still big enough where, you know, I could make some noise. People would recognize me locally and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, recognition was one of my big things. Even if I wasn't famous, I could still be recognized for being, you know, one of the best battlers in this area. So, you know, I was good. And I knew that, you know, pit fights could still be an avenue that I could use to get my name up to maybe get on a smack battle or something like that. So I kept rapping on pit fights. You know, I became like one of the better guys on pit fights. Shout out to pit fights. It was a great league. It was definitely a smaller, more brotherhood type of vibe there, you know, and it was cool. And so I was rapping there, and I was doing my thing there. Everything was cool, and I would say what really ended it was I was my career, my regular day job, it started to take off more, and I started to make more money doing that. And I was like, man, like it was hard to get paid for a battle. Like there was some weeks where I could go and I can get like maybe $200 for a battle, but I was at the point of my career where that wasn't really that much money for my time. So I was like, I could spend 2 weeks writing for this guy here and actually make less money this week, or I could, go just stay at work and, not have to memorize 8 minutes of material in my head and say it perfectly. Because it's kind of hard work when you got a job. It's like you're driving to work and you're memorizing your bars, and then you get home and you're writing bars for this guy, and then you still got to take care of all your responsibilities, and it can be nerve-wracking, So when you're not getting paid for it, when like at this point I've probably been battle rapping for a good 4, 5, 6 years, and when people don't even want to give you gas money, it's like I think I might just go do something else, and that's kind of how it basically kind of phased out. I just kind of started getting older and just started looking at being more of a professional, and it's kind of backed away from it.
Yeah. Now, do you think part of it, obviously, like the time that it takes, because you talk about 2 weeks, dude, I would have to, like, for me, I would need a month. I need a month. And these are when battles, again, so me and you probably, like, so I started battle rapping, like, in that kind of scene, 2012 through basically, like, 2014, basically. So those were my years.
Okay.
So where are you in 2012? Have you already stopped, or?
2012, I think I was, I was still rapping at that point. I think I stopped around 2014, 2015.
Okay, so we probably stopped fairly around the same time. Now, yeah, so because again, back then, the rounds that I'd be rapping maybe 2 minutes, a round or something. Like, and I would need a month. I dead seriously need a month. There would be some people I knew about that were writing for multiple people at the same time. Like, I could never do that. So, I mean, the amount of time, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. And, this is something that you're going to spend, 2 weeks or a month practicing, rehearsing, and then you only get one time to do it. It's not like a song where you can perform this thing a million times, till you're 80 years old. Like, this is, yeah, right. This is one and done. There is no, you have to make this as perfect as possible.
Perfect.
And I mean, it is one of those things that the amount of work that goes into it versus the reward is it's definitely a labor of love. Like, even more than music. I feel like music is like, it's not as nerve-wracking. There's not as much, like, you can kind of be isolated a little bit with music where, you're kind of doing your own thing and, kind of can be more experimental, and you have some time to work with. But having that battle constraint is such a weird thing because, the last person I had on here, Keith Urban, he battled in Bar Wars as well. And, we talked about it, and it's like you do have that competitive edge in the fact that it's like a sport, but unlike a sport, you don't want the other person to do like terrible where all they do is choke, because then the battle's not going to have replay value. So you want really both people to have as good of rounds as possible, so you have that replay value, so you can get those views, so you can be called a classic. And it is interesting because it's like a team effort, it's like a collaboration, but you're like trying to defeat the other person at the same time. So that's that is a really interesting thing. Now, where are you? So I asked him this, and I wonder your thoughts. So obviously, Grind Time was still doing judge battles. I'm probably sure through when you were battling, they were doing judge battles. And obviously, judge battles became uncool, right? When the Smash URL culture, because even though King of the Dot became very popular, I feel like URL became, mega popular as well. And the culture of URL of not judging battles, that took over the whole game of that. So where are you on that? Do you feel like did you like having battle judge because there was a definitive winner or loser? Where were you at on that, like that kind of vibe?
I like judging because, I mean, like I was saying before, I'm a very competitive guy. So, I want to be able to walk away and say I won. The judges said I won and you
Yeah.
lost. Like there were times I bet money on these battles. There was a good lot. There's at least probably 3 or 4 of them that's on tape that I bet money on. And I think I lost a good more of them betting money than I won. But I still liked, the aspect of let's put some money up, let's have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, and those if you're betting, there has to be judges. And but did you ever feel like this? Because this was a good point T. Urban brought up. Was like depending on where you were at, like what battle league you were on or what area, whatever the case was. A lot of times the judges were like kind of biased to that area or like maybe biased to the person that you're battling against. So it's, that's always tough.
Yeah, I remember. I went to Baltimore to battle a guy for money, and we battled like right in front of all of his people, and I'm sitting there wondering why nobody's cheering for me, and it was I basically battled in his backyard almost.
Oh wow!
And I drove an hour. Yeah, he was from Baltimore. He had all the Baltimore people there. I think I might have had like 3 or 4 guys with me. And so he definitely ended up losing my money on that one. But, it's like I still had that competitive spirit, so I was able to I battled one guy in upstate New York. That battle got a lot of views too. The guy said the N-word to me in the battle. If you want to go check that out, it's Smooth Black versus Collision. But yeah, I battled him.
Is that the dude with the fitted hat and he's wearing like a mink?
A mink? I don't know.
I don't know if it was a mink. He had one of the battles I'm thinking of where it was like you said some pretty hardcore stuff.
Oh yeah, I don't know we were both racist in the battle.
Oh, is that okay? Yeah, is that the battle?
Yeah, it was definitely the racist battle. But I mean, it was different though. It's like see people talk about white privilege. It's like I had to work hard and put together all of these like creatively racist bars for him, and all he had to do was say one word, and it just counteracted everything else in the whole battle. So it's like, how about that? So it's like, how are you going to sit here and tell me that what I said was as bad as what you said, when all you had to say was one word? I had to go and craft a whole round for you,
Yeah. Talk about something that would never happen today.
Oh yeah, that he would have got super canceled.
Yeah. No, everything that would have shut the club that was in would have got shut down.
Oh yeah. The person who owned the club, whoever gave him the liquor license, everybody's getting.
Everybody in the video in the background, they all got.
Oh yeah, the cameraman's wife loses her job. Yeah, 2012 was a different world, I guess.
Yeah. Now about that though, so with you, like you obviously have thick skin. I mean, with everything that we've talked about. So you, like the racial stuff and like all that stuff, like that's never gotten to you in any type of way, really. It seems like it's at least on a personal level.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, if you're a battle rapper, people are going to say stuff that's directly about you. Like people have said stuff about my actual mom. They've said my mom's name in the battle. They've threatened my child. Stuff about me. They said, "Oh, you did this. This is who you are, and this is why you suck." So that personal stuff offends me more than someone just making fun of this huge racial group that I belong to.
Right.
It's like if you make fun of something that's specifically about me, I find that more hurtful because that's personal versus oh, you're black. And I was okay, so are 40 million other people in this country. Okay.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not a. I'm kind of wondering how I'm gonna have to go back and watch that back because I'm trying to figure out how he thought that would be a good strategy.
Acceptable. I don't. He wasn't a very thoughtful person. This
will get him on my side.
Oh yeah, because we were in upstate New York, and it was mostly white people there. He wasn't down in he wasn't in D.C. Like if he was in D.C., Baltimore, I wouldn't have to do anything. The battle would have been over and the crowd would have beat his ass. And
right. Yeah,
that would have been it.
Yeah. Now does that because. Again, obviously, perspective is different for everybody, depending on your life and everything like that. So, like with me, obviously, I don't have the racial differences or anything like that. But one thing that did drive me crazy, like, you know, is when I did start getting into battling, and the league that I was battling in Bar Wars, which again, dope organization. They you know, had stuff very well put together. But a lot of the people there that were in it were like these rich kids from like a super wealthy neighborhood. Like that drove me crazy. Like it just bugged me so bad. Like, but was it ever like that for you, or you just like were like whatever? Like I don't care, you know, who it is, what they're saying. Like me, I feel like I had this huge chip on my shoulder for like ever. But it doesn't seem like maybe that was the case for you. It seemed like you were kind of like had like a more of a happy-go-lucky, or just like it's whatever kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I was kind of a happy-go-lucky type of guy, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't really have any. Yeah, and I think a lot of that, you know, in a way kind of worked against me to some extent, because when you're battling in a more street environment, you know, like the same way earlier in the conversation you said, yeah, I kind of picked up the vibe from you that you grew up in a nice, wholesome, strict home. You know,
right.
So people can pick up that vibe, you know, which is, I don't know what vibe I put off, but people just kind of get that vibe about me. So when you're in a street environment, you're in Baltimore City, and, you know, you got a guy that really actually does these things, that really actually pulls capers and robs people and stabs people, and he's talking about his real life. And then you got me, I'm rapping about, you know, the same type of stuff he's rapping about, but the authenticity isn't there. You know, that definitely worked against me in a lot of ways, you know. But that's
did you, and again, I don't want to we don't got to get like too deep with it, but just, you know, because I'm a very curious person. That's part of the reason why I do this in the first place. So obviously, like, when you're getting into that, that's really, you're more dealing with rappers and stuff, more in the battle rap arena, probably more on a face-to-face level than you ever were when you were just performing music, right?
Definitely.
And then dealing with these dudes who are real street dudes and stuff like that, is it hard, like, being, you know, obviously a black dude growing up in the suburbs, and then, like, you know, are you dealing with, you know, things like with white people that maybe, like, is there, like, what kind of things do you feel like you had to deal with that weren't like, you know, obviously, like, you got dudes that kind of grow up in an inner city, and maybe you're more around people that you feel like did you ever have that, like, I don't know if you, like, I would call it like an identity crisis.
Identity
like,
crisis. That was actually, I was thinking that term exactly while you were talking. Yeah, it's like, I would think that a good majority of black kids that grow up in, you know, not poor environments, you know, say you got two parents, your parents do okay, or maybe your parents even do well, you know, you kind of go through that identity crisis, because when you look at the media and the larger American culture, they're telling you that this is who you're supposed to be as a black man. You know, you're supposed to be straight from the gutter. You're supposed to be aggressive. You're supposed to, you know, get it out the mud. And it's like, that's not really my story. So it's like society kind of pushes middle-class black people in that direction. And a lot of times we kind of overcompensate and try more so to fit in somewhere where we may not even need to be, you know.
Yeah, and it's not, you know, and the irony of it all is, like, people who actually come from those environments don't really want to be in those environments. You know, they would, you know, they would trade it all in a second.
Definitely, yeah. So yeah, some of the guys that I met in battle rap, like some of the guys that was real street dudes that been to jail, that was actively still selling drugs and stuff like that. Like, they were like, yeah, man, it was like, the people like us, you know, we want to be like y'all. And I was like, that's crazy, because we want to be like y'all. But he's like, so who got it better at the end of the day? Y'all still got it better at the end of the day. Y'all the ones that y'all got money, y'all got your parents, y'all got opportunities.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's a crazy thing. I mean, it's like, you know, and I think hip hop is probably one of the first things. I mean, obviously this concept has existed before hip hop, but like being able to take something that's a negative, like being poor, or you know, again, you know, America, who has, regardless of what level you think it is, obviously there's a lot of racism that's embedded in the culture of America. I mean, I don't think there's any getting away from that. I think the only thing to really disagree about is maybe the levels of it and how one can maybe succeed and not succeed and all that kind of stuff. That's a whole different conversation. But
Definitely.
Making being black cool, like making like and then NWA. Like, you got to remember, like, I feel like the N-word before NWA was like it was something used against black people, and they said, no, we're gonna make this our thing, and we're gonna make this cool. And like that whole flip of like taking something that's a negative and making it a positive, like, that's like embedded in the American dream for one, but that's so hip hop. That's like
hip hop is definitely I think so hip hop is an extension of black culture, and then so a lot of times hip hop gets it becomes conflated or confused with black culture. It's like, oh, if you're not hip hop as a black person, then you're not even considered black anymore. And it's like, that can be problematic in a way, because you don't have to be or like hip hop to be black per se. But in a lot of the larger discussions, that's the way it is. Like, even what you were saying about taking the N-word and making it, something more positive. It's like that did kind of start with NWA for our generation, but there were people, like, there were a lot of movies and stuff like that. Like, for Richard Pryor had a stand-up that was called Bicentennial Nigger, and that, I guess that's what he wanted to be called or whatever, know. So there were a lot of there were a lot of blaxploitation films back in the 70s where people were, I guess they were taking the word to make it their word basically, and so NWA just kind of stood on their shoulders to an extent.
Yeah, for sure.
And it kind of gave it a bigger platform. So I would say those older movies and Richard Pryor stuff like that, people in the white community for the large part didn't really see that. But when NWA came out, they got so big that, the whole world was seeing what they were doing, what was already being done in the community.
Yeah, that is wild. And who would have thought a song called Fuck the Police by NWA would be like one of the most known rap songs of all time. Like, it's like that just caught on.
Here we are 30 years later, and the discussion is still basically the same as it was back then about fuck the police brutality, all that stuff.
Let me ask you this, because I know, and obviously I know you more for political discussions than anything right now. So it would be, I would be remiss not to have some kind of, end this kind of on some political discussion. So like the whole, obviously you got the white privilege topic you brought up, Black Lives Matter, all this kind of stuff. Now, you growing up in the suburbs and stuff, and me and you are pretty much from the same generation. You're only 3 years older than me, so I feel like generational-wise, our experience really probably isn't that different. And I remember being brought up, and which was like the liberal ideology at the time was, we are all equal, we are all one, we are all like, there are no races kind of thing. And so like, and that was kind of like my thought process, right? And I was like, we need to wash like the world from like people isolating themselves into these different categories. Like that's like I was like 100% like on that. And I thought that was, and I think those intentions, when that thought process was constructed, was good. Like maybe if we raise a generation to not see race, maybe that will kind of rid the world of racism, so to speak. But I think what the problem was is that like when we grew up, that the world around us still had these other problems that were existing before and obviously exist after us. Where do you kind of see all that?
You mean like as far as everybody coming together as a rainbow coalition and we all being one big happy race?
You're obviously like, politically on Facebook, like you're not, you're obviously not, I post stuff that's obviously too extreme for you in some regards. You seem like a nice in the middle kind of person, and obviously you probably grew up with a lot of white friends, right? Is that a fair?
No, actually, like
really?
my school was, I didn't really see too many white people growing up like at all, which is crazy. So it's like we grew up in like, it was a neighborhood where, I would say my parents were kind of different. Like the fact that, I had both my parents in my house. Most people that I grew up with, they necessarily weren't doing as good as I was. So I didn't really grow up in the hood, but I didn't really grow up in like,
blue collar.
Yeah, I would say blue collarish, but it was mostly I would say elementary school through all the way through high school. There might be 10 white kids at my school at the most.
Oh wow!
Through. And then, so I kind of thought the world was kind of like that in a way, you know.
Yeah.
And then I joined the Marine Corps, and that was like the culture shock of my life, where I was like, where do all these white people come from? This is crazy. Like I was not used to being the only black guy in a room. It was
So that's
crazy.
where all these white people from your Facebook come from.
I would say, a good amount of them come from the Marine Corps. And then after I got out of the Marine Corps, and I went to college, I met some people in college, and I had, I kind of had like this little atheist type of kick that I went on, where I met a lot of atheist friends on Facebook. So, you know, I guess most atheists were probably white. So I met a lot of white friends through that. And
Why do you think that? Why do you think that is? Because that's, I feel like you keep giving me stuff that I want to ask you. You keep hitting these little triggers.
I try to be interesting, you know. I think it might be like an education and more of a culture thing. Like, I think the higher you go up on the educational pole, the more you're going to see people who are less religious. They might still say that they're a Christian or this or that, but the way they live their lives won't really jive with it. Not as far as them being less moral, but just that, you know, they probably won't go to church or pray as much or stuff like that, you know. So it seems like the more educated a population becomes, the less religious they become, you know.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I mean, what I'm interested in that, because I remember my dad's friend. He was like his best friend growing up. He passed now, but when he was younger, like, this dude was a dude probably like a hippie from the 60s, right? That's like this dude's kind of vibe. Like, used to take acid and drive a Harley cross country. Like, that was this guy's life, yeah. And so he was like super atheist and all that kind of stuff. And then towards the end of his life, he became religious again. And I remember talking to him like I don't get it. Like, how do you already kind of come to the decision that you don't believe in this, and then this isn't the thing? And he said, you know, all I can tell you is just wait, and when things get, you know, when things get closer, when you get older, you do start becoming more religious. And I always thought that was weird, but I wonder if it's just maybe when you feel like your time is out and you're like, and you're more conscious that this is running out, like, hey, maybe I better start hoping that there's something else, you know? This ride's almost over.
That makes sense. Yeah, some people, they're not really atheists per se. They're just against God. They might not, they still believe in God, but they got beef with him or something like that. Yeah, so then once you get, 79 years old, and it's like, wait, I'm probably going to die in the next 10 years. So let me squash the beef with God, so I can so I can be good, But if you didn't really, if you came to the conclusion that there was no God through scientific means and stuff like that, then I don't really see a person coming back around. Sometimes it does. Like, people make big changes in their life.
Well, for you, though, because what's interesting to me, because I have you grew up in a very religious household.
Yeah.
So was part of that rebellion, though, in terms of, I felt oppressed in this environment, and I felt like my thoughts were oppressed, so now I'm kind of, someone put me up on atheism, and now I'm, going the opposite way?
Part of it, yeah, because, if we want to get deep into religious discussion, it's like the thing that happened was, when I started, looking at what the concept of hell, the concept of, people not living the way they're supposed to on Earth for, less than 80 years and then going to be tortured for all eternity, and it's like, that just seems kind of messed up. So I started doing my research and looking into things and trying to find a way for hell not to exist. And I started researching and looking, and the more I researched into, that one topic, I started to see the support beams for religion just kind of start to fall away. And, that's how I came to basically that conclusion. And, I was in more of a rebellious phase at that time. But now at this point in my life, I'm not really rebelling anymore. It's just kind of what I think at this point. I wouldn't say that I'm a militant, super atheist. I would say at this point, I'm kind of reserving judgment, like if something happens, if I get knocked off my horse on the road to Damascus, then I'll believe it, but you got to show me,
Yeah, no, that's because I definitely, of course, went the militant atheist way. So I was very knee deep, we need to really force people to not be like, I was getting on to like the Soviet Union, like communist Russia, like Stalin kind of like vibe. And, I kind of had an epiphany, and I was like, the reasons why I hate organized religion are because, of all the destruction it causes and all the stuff. Like, you start going that route, and it's anytime you have a belief that, it's like a Captain America quote. I love this quote, and it's from Captain America, but I don't care. About anytime in history someone's tried to stop a war before it happens, ends up, making the situation worse kind of thing. That whole quote, I forgot the exact one, and I feel like that's kind of part of that. Everyone, like, people may start out with good intentions, but then when you want to force the whole world to like kind of think a certain way or be a certain way, then you're no different than what you were trying to.
You've kind of made another religion, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I kind of ran into people like that, like when I was on my militant Shiite atheist type of kick. I kind of I was in all these atheist Facebook groups, and it was kind of like these people, it seemed like they just wanted a religion without God, basically. Like they were setting up meetings where they would go, they would get up on Sunday and they would go sit in the same building and listen to some guy in the front tell them about how good it was to be an atheist. I'm like, bro, this is church. Like, what are you guys? You guys are meeting up together to talk about how much you don't want to be, how much you hate God. It's like that's the Christian fellowship. It's just without the Christian part. You know, so I kind of stopped being in those groups because it's like you guys are just having a religion, basically. Like you have a shirt that says I'm atheist and you're like evangelizing to people about atheism. It's like you just replace one thing with another, So
that is pretty funny.
I know, right? It's ironic.
Yeah. No, I definitely started getting that. I never got invited to any meetings like that, but I know that they exist. And atheist church. I started getting those vibes from people, and that definitely, I was like, I think these people are just not, I don't think they're thinking this all the way through. And I kind of right now am more like, I don't believe in a God per se, but I'm kind of like open-minded a little bit. Like, there's, to have the idea that I 100% know how the universe works and all these different things, like, no, but anybody that would say that is lying. There's no way that you can be definitive about that.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. So, that's wild, man. We've definitely covered a lot.
It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll have to definitely everybody I'm talking to, man. I definitely want to probably do sequels with, so to speak.
Oh yeah,
man.
Well, like once you get your whole Joe Rogan thing going, we can come.
Yeah,
come do the video. Yeah, that'll be dope.
Man, you and Troy got to do a podcast, though, man.
Oh, yeah, they said, Troy and, me and Evan, people keep saying the podcast vibe. I'm not motivated enough to do it myself, but if someone, just yokes me into it, like here we are now, I'm down for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty easy thing. I mean, just having a conversation, you get something to record it. Obviously, I'm starting out on the ground level playing with different things, but it's especially if you don't have to do it in person, where you have to schedule people to meet up and all this kind of stuff. Like, this is probably the easiest way, man.
Definitely. Oh yeah, that works. Your expert opinion,
Hey, yeah, as expert as it can be, man. So
that's the name of Math podcast, right?
What'd you say?
Math has a podcast, right? Named
Math
My Expert Opinion. Yeah.
Oh, for real? I didn't know that. That's wild.
Yeah, it's good. It's called My Expert. It's called My Expert Opinion. That's what. Shout out to him. Yes, that was the joke.
Well, over my head, the bars.
Hey, bars indeed.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, no, it's been a pleasure. We'll definitely have to do it again, and I definitely appreciate your time, man. So you have a good night, and we'll be in touch, man. All right.
All right, bro. Peace.
All right, peace, man.
All right.